Well, good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're here today on this online session to interview this very special lady that I actually was lucky enough to meet at the World Future Energy Summit this year. And I was absolutely taken aback by her knowledge, her experience, and everything she had done in many different technologies. And I thought that some of this knowledge that she has could be shared with some of you, and that you would also enjoy learning about how companies innovate. With us today, Sonja Chirico. She looks after strategy innovation for Equinor. And don't worry, if you have not heard the word Equinor before, don't worry about it. It was actually previously called Statoil and recently changed the name, and actually changed it very, very recently. So we're actually going to be asking Sonja a little bit about why the change of name. And just to let you know, these live interviews are part of course, the skill development program for renewable energy professionals. Everybody who works in renewable energy is welcome here. We try to share information on areas, trendy areas, areas that you need for your career development. And one of them is understanding who are the current leaders in our industry, what do they do, how do they get there, because that will help you also further your career and understand, how different paths sometimes take you to the big job. And just before I introduce Sonja, a little bit about why I think that Sonja's know-how is quite unique, and also her experience is insanely valuable and difficult to acquire, is the fact that, when we think about big data, about artificial intelligence, about innovation in general, we always think about them as abstract industries. But we don't really think, and it's not easy to figure out how these technologies come into companies, especially when it's a large company like could be Statoil, and how this diversifies slowly but surely, and how those projects are made so that Statoil moves into renewable energies and starts using these new technologies in their day-to-day. Because the truth is, it's very possible that all of these technologies bring us an 2.0 energy industry, but how do you transition them into that? Well, adapting to these technological changes, what Sonja has done all her career. And, she's like playing with a number of things there at the same time, a number of expectations. So we're going to hear how they do it from her today. So before, I ask any questions, Sonja, welcome. Thank you so much for having said yes to this interview. I think we're all going to learn a great deal today.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's our pleasure to have you here. And guys, please share, where you're joining from, what countries. I see so far we have people from Buenos Aires, and we have someone from Libya as well. So it'll be nice to know where you guys are joining from. So Sonja, let's start with the interview then. And, the first question, it's going to have to be about Equinor. What does it mean? Why did it change the name? It's really, really brand is really, really new. So what was the thinking behind that change?
Right. So the company Statoil is not a new company. It's been around for a very long time. So and it has been originally an oil and gas company, but last year we changed our strategy, and it's very evident now that we want to become a broad energy company. And in order for that to have the ambition of that going forward, it was also decided that we wanted to change our name. And the name is really based on equi, which is the beginning of several words like equal, equality, and equilibrium. And that shows to the values that we want to portray. And then Nor, of course, is because of our heritage coming from Norway.
Oh, I'm doing several things here with the, excellent, thank you very much. So Equinor, well, I suppose, great name of change name. It doesn't have the word oil anymore, so we're happy to see that there. But it's going to take us a while. I think I might say Statoil. So sorry if I do. So tell us, what is your role at Equinor, and exactly what do you do day to day, so that everybody understands?
Right, so I'm head of strategy and innovation in the business area that's called New Energy Solutions. And the role of New Energy Solutions is to both build renewables portfolio for Equinor, and the ambition is to grow this part of the business into 15 to 20% of the capital investments by 2030. But also we have a mandate to look after how to decarbonize our oil and gas. So also looking at CCS and hydrogen potentially from natural gas. And my day-to-day activity is, I guess, it's about emails, of course, but it's also about meetings and especially working with people, solving and trying to make solutions for how to go ahead in the future with the activities we want to. I do travel a bit, but not that much. I try to use video as much as possible, so it's great to have this virtual interview as well.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I suppose, you know, you have to embrace the new technologies. And I think that obviously face-to-face interaction, you know, sometimes you just need to have it, but it's good that you're not traveling so much because not everybody enjoys it. And a lot of the people that we interviewed, like Patty, we interviewed last, literally is in a plane, you know, 5 days a week. It's difficult to keep up. So, okay, so let's look, you know, let's go back and let's look at your career. How did you become an engineer? Because to get the big job, first you have to start somewhere. So how did you become an engineer? What were you thinking? Why engineering?
Right. So from when I was a young child, I always been very curious. So I always asked a lot of questions. I'm sure my parents were kind of stressed by it, but especially my father was always so good at trying to explain things. So when I had a question around, you know, the universe or anything, you know, he would sit down and he would take the time and try to explain it. So to me, that was really something about understanding science. I always loved math and puzzles. Crazy about, you know, the big puzzles. So when I was growing up and came to high school, I asked my counselor, who was giving us advice on, you know, what should you do when you want to go to university. And his advice was, since I liked maths and physics, he said, why don't you go into engineering and choose the direction of electronics? And that's what I thought was a great idea, because at that time I needed somebody to narrow down the opportunity space for me, because there were so many things you could do. But at 18, it's really something about getting some clarity around what could be one route of direction. And I chose to go into engineering.
And I can see you have a laser focus, right, in talking to you. So once you were in there, and there was this movie, right, a movie that inspired you. I love this story when you told me.
Yeah, no, I really like the problem solving. That's always something that intrigued me, and that's what I kind of, for me, what I visualize when I think about engineering is looking at, there's a challenge and somebody's got to solve it, and you are limited with regards to resources. And to me, the Apollo 13 trip was really something around there, where this was a trip that was supposed to go in space, but had problems when it was out there. And the engineers in Houston were then tasked to solve the issue of lack of oxygen, so that people could actually survive all the way back to Earth. And they only had certain things up there to kind of purify the air. And that to me was, you know, this is the true finding solutions and not just looking at the problem, but actually solving it within a given time frame.
A bit like MacGyver, you know, you have to do what's available the best that you can. And I think that says a lot about you. And, you know, also, I think it has influenced your career a lot. I think it'll come through, you know, as we talk to you. Tell us about your first job. What did you do? You know, what did you learn? You were there for quite a while.
Yeah, so when I graduated from university and went to university in the UK, I came back to Norway in Stavanger, where I live, and that's where I started with engineering for oil and gas business, working for a company called Aker Engineering, and it was mainly around instrumentation and automation. So to me, that was, you know, a new field. I came fresh from university, so there were lots of things to learn, and it was very intriguing to understand how the designs that you kind of put out on paper then turned into real constructions. You know, you went to the yard and you could see how big these platforms actually were. So for me, that was really fascinating. I tried to move myself towards telecommunication, because that was always an area that interested me also when I was studying electronics at university. So I moved more or less in towards that space where it was about, radars and how to see over what's going on at sea. But it was a lot about various systems that I could understand more of, and that I enjoyed that. So I was there for 6 years.
Up until you joined Statoil in 1998, correct? So
yes.
what were you in there?
So then it was more understanding that when I was working for an engineering company, I was of course delivering on other people's projects. So the projects were done by the oil and gas companies. They were kind of the ones setting out what needed to be done, and then the engineering company delivered. So I really would like to be part of further upstream of the designs, how to influence even what should be done and when. So I started working for Statoil in their telecommunication area in '98, and that was also very interesting. But at the point, I started realizing that IT communication and telecommunications were really technologies that were converging. They were kind of meeting each other more and more often. So to me, it became something, my thirst for knowledge was really to understand, well, what is this new space of IT communication that I didn't know much about? So I myself asked if I could work for our IT department, and moved into IT in 2000, working on networks and network communication.
And just to the audience, a clarification, because we've discussed this before, Sonja, but the next question I wouldn't have probably asked if it was a man I was interviewing, because it's about children, and Sonja had children in this period, but this is the thing. There are not a lot of women in this kind of levels. There are few and far between, and it's not so easy, to be able to, sort of combine your personal life with your work life sometimes. So I think it's important that this is sent out, how the people who've managed to do it, how they've managed to do it. And also I hope to inspire also people in the audience to understand that this is doable. So, the question, just to explain, why the question is there, because, you probably will see that I won't ask any of the other guys this question because it's kind of a difficult one. But Sonja, you had children in this period, and you have 3 children. How did you manage? How did your work help? What did you think went right? Because it seems like, only Norway or like the northern countries can get it right. So I'd love to hear.
Right. So yeah, it's true. I actually met my husband at university. So we were married a year after I graduated. So, as you said, direct line of sight all the time. So very efficient. So I after 2 years of marriage, our first child was born, and the system here in Norway is so that when a child is born, parents are given parental leave. So mother has the majority, but the father has also quite a lump of the leave. So what happened was that I was at home with our first child for 10 months, and then my husband took over for 2 months. And then our second daughter was born after almost 3 years, and then our son after another year. So they're kind of close in age. I think that has been a way where I've had leave every time we had a child, but the working environment is so that this is the common way of doing it. So when you come back, you feel that they're waiting for you. They'll give you more tasks. They're kind of, there's a plan when you're gone, that it doesn't it's not put against you. Right, so it's something about appreciating the fact that this is part of the long life that we will have as working people. So, and also because the men also have a portion of it, it's more like it doesn't make that big a difference if you're a woman or if a man. In that time period, everyone will be off for a while. I thought the way of combining work and having children has worked really well, with the fact that we have the ability to leave in the afternoon, but then when children are in bed, you had the chance to log on again and do some additional work. So you're putting in the hours, but you weren't necessarily having to stay in the office for a very long period during the evening. So it's this flexibility that I think has worked really well and have kept women in work or working, continue working. And of course, when you continue working, you get more experience, and that's when you get given more larger tasks. So I think that's one of the reasons why we have a lot of women in leadership positions, is the fact that they're staying in instead of maybe leaving to prioritize family.
And I suppose it's the solidarity as well. You went through it, so the people in your team that are going through it, you're just accommodating them. And I think we need more of that, because we don't see so many women up there. So anyone that is listening, take the lessons. And then in 2006, you were ready, right? You decided, okay, this is my time to go to, to the leadership positions. The interesting thing about Sonja, is that, when we were talking, we were doing the prep, she actually said to me that, like, being a mother, it prepares you for that sort of thing, because it allows you to understand human nature. I love that so much, Sonja. So tell us about that next sort of chapter. What took you there? What were you thinking when you decided to go to the next level?
Yeah, so I worked within technical area for a long time, and I loved having the specialist skills. So I liked, being able to actually be a good colleague and be one that people were asking, the detailed questions. I loved going into that. But then the leadership really intrigued me because of the fact I could see that you could get so much more done, because you could set the direction. You could be the one that really drives the strategic agenda and get the whole group and the team motivated to move to the next level. So yeah, it's true that having children also helped me mature, I think, as a leader, because one of the things that always intrigued me was that if you wanted to have a child to do something, you really have to know your influencing skills. So how do you get them? Don't tell them I told you this, but it's something about getting them to do what you want without them realizing that you're actually, pushing them in one direction. So I think that's something about, even when you work in a team, influencing each other in a positive way so that we all kind of pull in the same direction. It's something about, having that mindset that this is about people, and what they respond to is typically what I would also respond to. So if I, treat people with respect and also make sure that I'm able to listen and not just talk as a leader is a very important skill.
So, and tell us, what are you currently right now trying to achieve, and how are you working with your team to get there?
Right. So currently, my main task is really to drive our growth in renewables into accomplishing this 15 to 20% capex. And of course, this is a large sum because this, of course, is a huge company. So currently, we're we do a lot of offshore wind. So we have a large offshore wind portfolio, and we're growing this offshore wind. We're also looking into solar. And it's, the challenging bit is, of course, that we're growing into areas we haven't been before. So how to innovate within a company, within a large corporation, to drive to do other things than what the existing DNA is used to requires not just a strategy, but also an openness for the rest of the organization to adapt. So the main activities, I would say, is really to how to make sure that we are growing in the right pace, and that the whole corporation understands why we're doing this and supports us.
And you are looking at technology, say offshore wind, or it could be artificial intelligence, it could be whatever, and you look at that and you ask yourself, okay, how can this help us? Where can this help us? So you look at that abstraction, I suppose, because it's not even a technology, it's a whole industry. And then you actually have to make that work for you guys. You have to put it in a way in which you're getting those skills slowly, the people are getting those skills, but there's not very sudden, because of course things develop slowly. How do you even do that? That is, for me, is like, I think, the most important question in this interview, because I don't know about the people in the audience, but for me, that's the hard thing. I look at blockchain and I think, wow, yeah, great technology. I have no idea how to apply it today. So
yeah, I think, when my previous experience before I had this job, I was the CIO of Statoil, now Equinor, which was, ahead of the IT globally. And my experience from leading IT was really that when you talk to the business, if you talk about technology, it's really hard to understand what's the potential. So to me, it's always been around looking at the business side and then seeing how you can apply the technology instead. So it's more about talking about what could the business accomplish through the technology more than just promoting technology. So when we work on digitalization in our organization, it's very much around saying, okay, how could a digital wind farm look like? What would it be? What would it do differently? We're already using drones for inspection. Would it be, something more than that? We're already doing a lot of things. So it's not that you end up saying, now I'm done, now I'm finished. This is something about always looking for the potential of what that could do, but it's about translating it into what the business side would look like more than just what technology can do.
And there has a number of teams working sort of in the same arena, innovation, technology. So I think, I wanted to ask you, how is Statoil organized in terms of who does the research, who does the innovation, who does the thinking, the projects, and how do you pick, how do you match make, the certain technology with certain, there has to be a lot of communication, and this is often something that companies are bad at generally, so how do you guys do it?
Yeah, I think the importance is that, our values are very much, we have 4 values, and it's open, it's collaboration, it's courageous, and then it's caring. So these are the 4. And for us, collaboration is really the core of how we work. And because we have a matrix organization, so that means that we have a research and development department that is co-located, but then they do research also for our renewables business. So for us, it's important to collaborate. So when I'm in the business area, the way we do it, we work very closely with our research. We have our own innovation lab, which is where we mature the ideas that are closer to us, which are more like, how can we change the business model, or do things slightly different, or like add things like, I don't know, offshore wind plus gas, or doing wind plus desalination. So, combining things, those are typically the ideas that go through the innovation lab, which is where we're trying to, have people come in for a short period. And then, once you get to know if this is viable or not, then you stop. And then if it's a real project, then you would go to the project organization. But what we also have is that you have a corporate innovation team that looks at the cross-business innovation and also has very much around the external exposure. So I think the point is that you have these teams in various places of the business so that you get activities that are closely matched to the business needs. Because then you can more easily talk to the people who really understand the problem and understand the opportunity, instead of having these teams that are very separate from the business, where it becomes much harder to really get through interactions. So we're very much a matrix organization, but it's all dependent on collaboration and people talking to each other and people sharing a lot.
So the actual sharing and collaboration also becomes like a job role almost, to make that happen and to make that structure come together.
Yeah, it's very much around the fact that you're not giving resources to manage everything within your own space. The whole model is built around the fact that you have to work with others in order to succeed on your own tasks. So it entails collaboration from the beginning. And I think that has been working for a while, and it can always be improved, but there is definitely a DNA there that we want to continue on.
Yeah, sounds excellent, actually. Sounds like you can learn a lot, multidisciplinary. And when you look at a new technology, let's say, I don't know, blockchain, for the sake of arguing, how do you know, how can you separate or find out what is worth for you to look at and to spend time and money on, and what is just hyped and maybe either, to the not pile or to the maybe look at it in 10 years pile? How do you make that call?
I think it's it depends. I think technology is a lot to do with timing, because you can have something that's a great idea, but the time or the frame is wrong. And there have been a lot of people, I think, who has been around looking at things early. One of my examples, when I was reading this energy book, it said that Exxon were doing solar in the 60s. So to me, it showed, there's been a lot of various ideas at various times. I think, if you take blockchain, for example, I think it will mature into a lot of areas, but it needs to be understand what could you solve for by using blockchain. So what is it that you have within your business that really would be advantageous if you had this opportunity? So typically what we're looking at is within our trading, it's within our supplier relations. So, finding those areas where, you have a lot of contracts that are going back and forth and could be simplified by having that technology as a base. So I think it's more important to understand what the technology does and then lift yourself onto the business side and say, where do I see that there's a potential either to solve a current problem or where there is an opportunity for something new this can be used. And then it's about piloting and trial and error. And then, you need to do these small things in order to understand, and then you scale up. Because if you go into these with big projects and then they fail, you lost a lot of money and resources. So it's better to try the smaller ones first, and then if it makes sense, to scale it.
Yeah, this is the IT projects, right? Back on the days 30 years ago, where everyone went in like, and then yeah. Understood. Do you feel that you have missed any opportunities that maybe you should have, or were they?
Well, I think there's a lot of things to said to, hindsight is the most exact science, right? So it's very easy to say, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that. I think but I'm very much a person who keeps looking forward. So I think I kind of very quickly let go of what didn't happen. But, we see, for example, now in the offshore wind industry that there were some that were very, very early. And of course, that has been advantageous for them. I don't think we were late, but we still were not the first or the second. So something about keeping an open mind and understanding what's going on in various places and keep checking again. Because you might have, said that this is not the right thing at the moment, but things, change all the time. So keeping an eye on what are the changed circumstances. And in the energy world, we see that there are a lot of changing circumstances. So I think a lot of organizations need to revisit their plans to see if things are changing, and they should look at other things as well.
How often do you review your plans?
I think it depends on what level of plans we're talking about. I think, you can't really have a way of working where you shift all the time, because that makes it really challenging and also costly. So I think it's important to maybe revisit your strategic beliefs like every year or every second year, depending on what level you're on, but just to see if there are, changes of circumstances. I think there are other industries who've seen things change much faster, like we've seen through digitalization. So, and been taken by surprise. And I think, energy industry is no different. We really need to make sure that we understand how this digitalization impacts and what could be the outcome. But you need to have a balance between adapting and also having a strategy and a direction.
Absolutely. And, by the sounds of things and what you are hearing, I mean, I agree with you on timing. I think timing is the hardest science of them all. We barely ever even think about timing. But even in the industry that I was on, many times you could be early and just be there for years and nothing happens. And then when you're late, then everybody's there already. So it's a very, very fine balance. But it does seem like in this particular industry, innovation is happening faster and faster and faster and faster. So do you see the speed or the urgency of innovation increasing over time?
Oh, yes, I think so. Definitely. I think there is, because of digitalization, the world is connected. And it means that, changes that are happening, not even close to us, still impact us quite heavily. So I think that the speed of change is going faster just because of that. You don't have to wait for the local solution. It could, happen somewhere else, and then it's dispersed very fast around the globe. So I think that is definitely something that's new. I think that's exciting. I love change. That's why I went into IT for the first, in the beginning, because there you would always be seeing that things were changing and there were new opportunities coming along. I think when you're in working, and I think that's especially to young people, to understand that you really have to pay attention to upping your skills all the time so that you are relevant. And thinking that you can come through university and then finished, I've learned what I need to do. This is really about being hungry for more all the time. So So change is good, but it also needs to be something where you feel comfortable and feel that you're on top of it.
I was just thinking, I love change is not something that you hear very often. So it's really interesting to hear you say it. I would tend to say that I love change too, but then it's also scary, right? And
Definitely.
I agree. And this is where kind of it gets to the portion of the interview where, you get to kind of advise, I suppose, other people and, and yeah, embracing change is the first step, but also wanted to hear who inspires you, who inspired you to get to where you are.
I think I need to start with the beginning, and my father or my parents have inspired me quite a lot, and not because they're not engineers. My father was a welder from Italy, and came to Norway through his work assignment, and met my mother, who's Norwegian, and she's a housewife. So they're fantastic parents, but what they really did was inspiring me about this hunger for learning, and also being there to try to answer all the funny questions I had, and support, and also be there in order to help and explain why going to university is important, all these things, and I, at least why I was that was the right thing for me. I think my husband has inspired me several times, because he's always the one that maybe challenges me when I'm doing this, or I don't think I'm good enough thing. Which I've done so many times as well.
What a woman! We do that all the time.
Definitely. And then he said, well, who is that guy better than you, and so forth. And I think I really love him for that, because I think there's something about putting up the mirror and reflecting upon yourself, and sometimes we underestimate ourselves, and I think that's good to have. I think I've had bosses or leaders who I admired, but I've probably taken parts of what they've done and tried to make it into the perfect one, because I think we all have our strengths and our weaknesses. So there's no perfect person in anyone's mind, I think, but it's finding what you see that it appeals to you and works in your context, and then trying to learn from them. And then I think thinking about if I've read any books about anyone, I think the only one I could think of is I read the book about Steve Jobs. And it was because I've always been fascinated, and like everyone, I think, seeing what he's been able to accomplish. What I found was strange, though, was that maybe his style wasn't really the one I really appreciated. He, of course, got a lot of things done, but there's something about how can you actually ensure that you do get direction without maybe being so harsh. But what I really thought was great from his was he had this... they were going to clean up the portfolio of IT solutions. And he was very clear on a little bit of a dictatorish type of role, where you're saying, now you either agree on this, or you kind of have to leave the company. And there I thought, that's interesting, because that is not what normally happens elsewhere. Normally you take more time, you kind of take your time into this. So finding a balance, I guess, between a very type of strict leadership style, but also having enough speed to show that change is possible. That's some of the roles I try to copy.
He was bullish, right? And he had this clarity that
Yes.
To him was very clear. And I mean, that is also always admirable, even when you think he's not quite right, but that clarity. It takes years to build, though. And I think for the women out there, you got to work on it, because my experience is that we doubt ourselves a lot. And we need to sometimes just, assess ourselves a little bit from a third party. I agree with you on that. How has, your inspiration changed the way that you deal with your team?
So I think my team probably have seen me become more patient. I think, I probably was much more, keen to just get things done when I was younger and less experienced. I think this, continue building my own leadership style around patience and not being so trigger happy. Just jump to solutions when you see one, but really make sure that everyone gets a chance to be heard, and that we maybe think through the other alternatives. So I think that's a little bit to do with experience. You feel more confident, and by confidence you can relax. You don't have the sense of urgency, I guess, that you feel when you're not so confident. So that's I guess some of the differences, and I hope they've seen this as an improvement.
Yeah, I'm sure they have. I'm sure that your team loves working with you. It sounds to me, I would love to work with you. So here is another question, and this is for your advice to the younger people, you know, in terms of how to get to the job that, yeah, I'm sure many covet and think, oh my God, how did she get there? What's the advice for them?
I think, you know, as you've revealed, I've been working in this area for many, many years. So this is something about having patience. I think it's important to see that, you know, most people, we will work in you know, our adult life will be working. So that's a long time period. So have the patience to build the skills. So, you know, to become good at what you are doing will always be useful, even when you move on later on, maybe to a leadership role. Because I think being a leader and understanding the foundation, it's really important. I felt like when I was head of IT that I could really talk to the technical people because I had this experience myself and having worked in the area. So there's something about feeling or giving yourself time to build up the skills and not to be too impatient. And I think it's also important to just look at what you're doing and look at the inspiration around the tasks that you're doing. Try to find the positives and you know, there will always be negative with any job. I think when people think, oh, it's always greener on the other side, or, you know, you tend to get a bit disillusioned. But at the same time, you know, if it's really wrong where you are, then you should move on and find something else. So it's having this balance in what you're doing. And I think it's, if you find what you like to do, your energy will glow and you will become good. And if you're good, then you will be seen. So this is really about, you know, finding what is it that it gives you energy more than drains you. And that can happen in every type of industry, in every type of level. It doesn't have to be on the top. It can be, you know, being specialist in something as just as energizing as being a leader. So I think that's my personal, you know, what I've told my children is do what you love and then you will be good at it.
Yeah, I think that is also something that Steve Jobs said a lot. So maybe you have more in common than you think. So I think we have a couple of last questions, and then we have a couple of questions there that I'm going to read you as well. So one of my questions is the new technologies and industries that you're studying all the time. Which one intrigues you, or you're thinking, oh yeah, there's something here, you know, there maybe is an area where you'd be excited to work on or to look into?
Well, I think you know, one of the things that I think is interesting is how something as you know, the sensor technology is really, you know, going into everything. That kind of intrigues me, you know, where you will have sensors that you can swallow together with a pill, or you will have, you know, going into the human body, but you will also have them on our, you know, energy plants, and you will do a lot of things. And I think, you know, seeing how the sensor evolves and moves into, you know, it's probably artificial intelligence. That's the kind of the overarching, you know, user of all this data. But I think there's so much happening in that space, and it's the link between how technology kind of digitalizes even more than what's already there, and how that can change everything. So it's not one industry maybe, but it's the foundation. I guess it's the digital basis of everything. So even if I'm not working with digital at the moment, but business, I will still keep an eye on these technologies going forward.
And it sounds really interesting indeed. And I think my last question for now, and as I said, there's another two that I'm just going to read now, is just how you and Equinor, Statoil, Equinor, manage to keep the long and the short term, you know, like to balance that, because, you know, especially when it comes to innovation, there's two things that, do you focus on your core? Do you do the projects? Do you go too much? I don't know, is this managing that? How do you do it?
No, I think it's that is a challenge for anyone. I think if you have a successful core business and things are going well, it's very hard to kind of move into something different. I think what you need is a strategy, of course, which says something about what, you know, success will look like and why you're doing this. But you also need leaders who are very, you know, this has to come from the top. Because unless the, you know, the top management decides on this, unless they do, you know, this will kind of get eroded as it moves through, because it's always harder to change and to move into something that's longer term. You know, everyone can agree on the short term, that's something that you can see and you can almost touch, but the longer term gets very abstract. So as long as this is, I think the balance really has to be through the clarity that the top management provides, at the same time as it has to have foundation and something that people feel that is possible, so that they see that this is an achievable path. But I think it's not, I don't have a clear answer on how to balance the two. I think you just have to make sure that you keep both in mind when you make both the short-term decisions and the long-term, that they have to work hand in hand and not against each other.
That is a difficult task. I always break my diet, you know, just every day, like even personally, you know, it's hard to keep that. So, but it's important when you think about the future, and you have to make sure. So questions from the audience. You have two, David and Anna here says, what areas or what things, I suppose, are more important to work at the management level in a company like Statoil, Equinor? Is it qualifications, experience? You know, what skills do you need essentially?
I think you will find in our management that you have all kinds of qualifications. I think you will typically need experience. I think that is very important. I think to us it's a lot around the way you work. So our behavior is just as important as showing results. So finding that the combination of the collaborative style is very important. How to motivate teams and how to make sure that that is moving ahead. So I think maybe that's one of the things where I think is very, maybe a little bit different, is the fact that our behavior is so important and will always be part of any evaluation, more than just our deliveries. But I think when I look at the colleagues I have, we do have a lot of women being leaders. So I think diversity in gender, but also in experience and in culture and in passports is important for our organization, because diversity really is the thing that drives even more improvements and new ideas, but also strengthens and robusts and makes existing challenges more robust.
You know, that is a beautiful answer, actually, Sonja. Thank you so much. I think the fact that you guys value diversity so highly, and the fact that you value, you know, keeping that sort of like family feeling, you know, of collaboration going is really, really important. And it's something that companies miss out very often. So it's nice and refreshing to hear. Next question from Anna says, which skills do you value the most when hiring someone to join your team? This is a specific question about skills.
Well, what I think is important, that it's very much around attitude, because you can learn skills. Of course I would always look for people having the area that I'm after. If you're going to work in one certain area, you would like to see that people have either experience working on it, or that they have learned it through university or other things. But I think what I normally look at is what is your attitude towards the area? Because it's something about if this is an area which really gives you energy, it comes through. And as I said, if this gives you energy, I feel confident that you will be good at it. So it's something about showing that positivity around not just the fact that you are intrigued about the tasks, but why you want to work there. What is it that makes you gives you energy in that? So not a particular skill, because I've hired for so many different roles that I think it would be very difficult to give one area better than others, but more on the have the basics in there, but from there show that you are really, this is something you really want.
I think the English and the Americans like to call that the growth mentality, right? That you think that everything is going to become bigger and better, and you have that attitude of growth. You just got another question, so if you don't mind, we'll just do the last one. It says, with the latest strategic plan that you currently have, for renewable energy, the new innovations, will you be, looking for additional personnel worldwide?
Yes, I think we will, of course, because you know, we are growing. We're currently in is it 36 countries around the globe, and there we are broadening ourselves and looking at ourselves as an energy company. So we will see not just oil and gas, but also renewables in a lot of these geographies, and new projects require new people very often. So definitely, so I'm happy that people are actually thinking about us and looking to work in our company. And I would very much invite them to look at our webpage, where everything is posted, all the positions globally.
Thank you so much, Sonja. I have to say, you know, you guys, for me, it's beyond a pleasure to be able to share, you know, this knowledge from Sonja with you. I already was completely stricken by how much she knows, by her experience when I met her, and I thought it was a real shame, you know, that not many people get to meet her maybe, and I thought, okay, we need to spread this wide. And for what I can see, people are interested in the company, Sonja, and I think that reflects also in the way that you talk about it and the things that you guys are doing. So thank you again for giving us your time and for sharing with us your knowledge. And you know, I think that you guys have it right. And I hope that other companies you are learning from what you guys are doing. And I think this is a very, very exciting industry to be in. We've gone a lot actually, ahead of the time that I thought, you know, because I thought half an hour and it's actually 45 minutes, but I think it's worth it. So thank you again. And I hope to see you very, very, very soon again. And thank you very much for everybody else who joined as well. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Belen.